Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the break and the family picture moment. Let's gather our focus while we move into our next session. The next session is Policy Dialogues on Small and Medium-Sized Cities and Urban-Rural Cooperation. Steering our discussion is Juana López Pagán, the General Director of Policies Against Depopulation at the Spanish Ministry of Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge.
Good morning again. Very nice to be here in Cuenca. Very nice to be part of this great family of ESPON. Thank you very much for all the efforts of the team of ESPON and my own team to have a reality that is this seminar that for us is very, very important. It's an honor for me to be here in behalf of the Spanish presidency of the European Union. And I hope this conference will not only be a space for a reflection. This space maybe help us to put forward the best recommendation for the European Union future territorial cohesion policy, and of course, to contribute to the conclusion of the Spanish presidency of the Council of the European Union. From the beginning, and in hand-to-hand with the ESPON program, we saw clearly that this seminar was a magnificent opportunity to situate in the debate of the population of socio-territorial vulnerabilities, that we had to talk about territorial structure, of designing policies with a territorial perspective, that we had to talk about territorial functionality of small and medium-sized cities, territorial cooperation, but above all, we had to put the emphasis on the rights and opportunities. And that's what we're going to talk about in this session. And let me take the opportunity to speak in my own language, in Spanish, only a few minutes. Is it possible to put one slide from the technical team, please? The next one, or maybe I can manage from here. Okay, it's only one slide. Antes de presentar
Before introducing the participants this session, please allow me to give you some information and some prior reflections. I will be very brief about what we can see on this picture, on this slide. The Spanish government has for the first time put into place a public policy nationally to tackle territorial inequalities. We have approved an investment plan with more than 13 billion euros. We did this taking into account the global agendas, particularly the 2030 agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals, so that we leave no one behind. But they have also done so taking into account the European frameworks, taking them as a reference and building together with them an implementation nationally. And I am talking about the Territorial Agenda 2030, the medium-term vision for rural territories, not to damage the cohesion of the territories, and the toolbox for the challenges, the demographic challenges, among other things. And all this in order to have active, inclusive and functional territories through better territorial vertebration and better rural-urban cooperation. This is what we're going to be talking about in these coming sessions, and hence the importance and the need to push forward a new territorial contract where the social impact that we have as a European community takes into account the territorial variable. In this new paradigm, small and medium-sized cities are key. They are intermediaries and facilitators for this territorial cooperation that should favor a rebalancing of rights and opportunities. I have a fantastic panel. We have very many people that will take the floor in this first session, and we would like to open a first segment, and I would like to call out the different panelists who will tell us more about the progress we have been making in the last weeks and months together with ESPON to try and see what the findings, the recommendations are through the elaboration of a magnificent policy report and those results and outcomes that we want to present in this seminar. I would like to give the floor to the coordinator of this policy paper, Mr. Josep Maria Llop, a prestigious academic who also leads the UNESCO Chair for Intermediary Cities. Josep Maria, you have the floor.
Buenos días.
Good morning.
Voy a usar también mi
I will
lengua
also use my language,
para presentarles
my dear language, in order
marco
to
general
introduce to you and present
reflexión de lo
a general
de la
framework
intermediación
of
en
the
estos
importance and the role of intermediation of this process of change towards ecologic transition and territorial policies. Can I have my presentation on screen, please? Oh, can I do it myself?
Voy a explicar solo los dos
I shall now explain the first 2 points, because then Nicolas Rossignol from ESPON will explain more specifically the development of the project itself. As we have just heard, we are drafting the recommendations paper, a global perspective of the world. What are and what is the dimension of middle-sized cities in Europe? And then I will give you some reflection of the intermediation concept, not just to have certain academia activities, but also to inspire changes in what we do. Our chair, and I am being humble here, it is the first census, global census of cities of more than 50,000 citizens throughout the world. It is a geo-referenced compound, and we saw that although they have 5% more population than large metropolitan cities, those which are between 50,000 and 1 million is only 5% less population, and we have more than 10,000 cities with more than 50,000 inhabitants. My hypothesis that we're trying to confirm is that over 20,000 people, we have around 30,000 cities, and cities of more than 10,000, we have around 150,000 cities of such sort. The human dimension of the intermediate, medium-sized and small is very powerful, and if we look at the map of the 10,000 cities across the Mediterranean basin and the dimension, not only in terms of the amount of population and the urban centers, but also look at the positions, the geographical positions of those urban strategies, we quickly can open the dichotomy between the rural and the urban and the rural. Can I have some help in trying to move through the different slides, please? Next slide, please. We shouldn't waste any time, and well, the maps that follow are the results of the work by ESPON that will be presented later by Nicolas, and they map in 4 different European countries the importance of the nucleus of more than 20,000 and less than 75,000 inhabitants. This is the type of cities we've analyzed, and we are looking at a world zoom of the importance of these nucleus in urban areas. If we look at the different municipalities, if we look at the functional areas, if we look at those functional areas, I was thinking to myself that it is the territory that's important, and not just the generic territory, but the eco-environmental territory, and the integrated intermunicipal territory. Now the numbers. We have a large amount of such cities only in Europe, only the 4 countries we studied, and you can see them in red. We have almost 2,500. So if you imagine figures across Europe, the 27 member states, and it's not just the small nodes, the small urban nodes in the territory, the functional areas. I'm not just talking about areas of influence, because areas of influence privilege the concept of the influence of the urban. Those functional areas are the ecosystemic spaces where it is not only the human element or the artificial element, but also the environmental, the ecological, water, air, health, food, the reproduction of life. These functional areas are the important thing, because only in 4 countries with a radius of within 25 kilometers do account for a large chunk of territory. If we can build the idea of the intimidation paradigm, articulating it with policies, Europe, but also the world, will be able to mobilize the conditions for the development, not only a sustainable development, but a more equitable development and much more efficient from an economic perspective, in economic terms. Next slide, please. If we look at the map on top, a map from the NASA, and then we have another map that shows you the different areas of the world and the illumination, the lighting of those areas with 50,000 inhabitants or more. I worked very much on Africa, and there are some cities that NASA didn't see because they don't have any public lighting. But if you look at the map at the bottom, the rural-urban relationship is based on a system of urban nodes of different scale and size. The size is relative, obviously, in the different regions. It is actually dependent on the income we have in different areas of the world. The size is dependent on the geography. The populations nearing the mountains in Rwanda have nothing to do with other urban hotspots, for instance. If we understand the potential of environmental and functional areas, understanding that these urban nodes should attend to their needs, then we will see the results. Today, there have been many interventions by speakers with extraordinary quality explaining all this. Because geography and culture, diversity, well, small is beautiful, isn't it? But there was an ecology expert who said that it is also powerful in the environmental sense. Small is powerful, but there are some weaknesses. The idea of intermediation, I am not calling for this intellectually, but rather operationally. We must try to focus on our capacity of knowing the diverse situations and the potentials of these urban areas, and going from the bottom up. What abilities we need? Well, it is essential to strengthen and to support the training and working capabilities of public entities and otherwise found in the territories. And besides, we need to do or make progress in the knowledge we have in order to innovate in those things we need. Also, the potential that this huge network of urban nuclears have across the world. Let's not just base our polycentric idea on an urban or urbanly led process. Let's use it to support the power and potential of these nuclear for creating policies for those territories, and I am talking about capacities where interconnecting through transport links is also essential. And it is not easy. It is essential and it's not easy. It is not just about money. Somebody also mentioned this morning, and they were quite right. This connection requires also a change that has already come up in order to govern at intermunicipality level and multi-level, in a multi-level manner. I worked in many different positions. I worked in different councils. I was a mayor, and I know the business. I know what the difficulties of what I am proposing are. Diversity offers potentials for dosing and for analyzing. This is really passioning. This is just like love. Let's not talk about love. Let's talk about alien love. Talk about a territory, and this requires in-depth knowledge of that territory. And the society as a whole should be aware that circular economy, bioeconomy, etc., has specifically in those territories we're dealing with, it has a significance and a special significance in energy flows. We cannot, when thinking about intermediation, only think about the production of renewables, which will be produced there, not on the rooftops of cities such as Madrid. This is an opportunity to create jobs, qualified job creation, and also creating services for the rest of the elements that I mentioned before. And I shall conclude now by saying that I admire the talks that I've heard this morning because they had extraordinary quality about the facts, the policies that have been developed and implemented. And, the talks such as yours, Mercedes, I really enjoyed what you said. And as we make progress in this regard, I would ask you not to think about the concepts that we often use, but rather let's think about a shift of paradigm. Let's not think about, for instance, polycentric positions, by thinking that it is actually the nucleus that polycentrically move the territory. We have the landscape, we have the space, we have geography. And changes in international policy should take into account the areas, the intermediary areas of the territorial urban systems. It is an opportunity we have in Europe, a clear opportunity with the capacities to do this, and it is an opportunity that the world has in general terms. Thank you.
Ahora sí, ahora, uy, yo me voy a quedar aquí ya sentada para poder seguir.
Okay, I will remain seated and I will continue to invite the rest of the speakers on the stage. Thank you, Josep. When from the General Secretariat of Demographic Challenge, we started working with the ESPON program and we started defining what the priorities we wanted to analyze were. We found, first and foremost, a team that had completed a lot of studies, that had a lot of background, and also a team of researchers that were required to not only do analysis, but rather to have a look at the recommendations and the results and outcomes from the policy report for the drafting of better public policies.
With the ESPON team, with Nicolas Rossignol, that I have the opportunity to invite to him to Talavera when we start to talk about this issue. So please, Nicolas, it's your turn. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good morning. Is it working? No. A ver, poner la siguiente. Bueno. Thank you. Okay. So, small and medium-sized towns and cities form the backbone of the polycentric urban structure of Europe. If you remember, Marcia told you that already in her introduction, and also Josep just explained that it applies also the same at the global level. So the whole day is dedicated to them. The whole day is dedicated to these places that you can see on this map, which is a totally new map released by the ESPON GTC team very recently, and on which you can see all the places that we are talking about today. This map is displaying all the towns, all the small cities of Europe, excluding those places, small towns, cities that are located within functional urban areas. So it's clearly the core of our discussions today. You've heard from the previous speakers the crucial role they play in regional economic development and also in social well-being, how much they contribute to providing jobs and also to sustain local and regional services. You will hear from speaker after me that even farther away from regional capitals, these towns and small cities may become also the drivers for opportunities. They also help shaping functional linkages between urban and rural areas to fight against depopulation, and they also contribute to better economic, social, and territorial cohesion. So for all these reasons and many much more, probably, the Spanish presidency and the Ministry for the Ecological Transition, Juana's team, Francesco's team, requested us, ESPON, to reflect on the contribution of small towns and medium-sized towns and cities to the social and territorial cohesion of Europe, and to look also into the situation in some specific countries. So we looked at the situation in Spain, of course, but also in Germany, in Italy, and in Portugal, together with a group of researchers coordinated by Josep. And we dig into policies implemented at the different levels. So policies implemented by the states, but also by the regions or by the municipalities. And the goal was to unveil the existing strategies and the mechanism in place aiming at supporting the development of these small towns in the long-term perspective. So this work resulted in a series of reports. You can find like country reports, as well as in a draft policy paper. And you can see on the screen, the cover page of this paper is now available for your review. You can access it and download it on the ESPON website and on the web page dedicated to this seminar. You will find in this document, in particular, very nice examples of different towns and small cities. So I will not present them all to you because later today and also tomorrow, some of the very rich lessons we learned out of these local success stories will be presented. I'm very happy to have the mayor of Soria in this panel today with us, because Soria was one of the cities that we looked at. In Spain, it was also the case for Villena and Merida, Fundão in Portugal, and Saluzzo in Italy, and Oschersleben in Germany. All these stories tell us about the effective potential of these type of places. So these type of places, they can be many things. There are an infinite variety of situations, but the case we looked at showed that actually policies aiming at fostering quality of life appear most of the time to be a constant approach in view of achieving both the retention and the attraction of people, knowing that active young people, families are most of the time those populations that cities aimed at attracting or keeping. And these policies, they target both services to the population, but also more structural dimension of urban development. So the former is quite well known. We will discuss it at broad during this seminar. It includes the provision of services of general interest from education, health, mobility, etc. But the latter also, and I would like to highlight it a little bit more, is a key element when it's offering high quality of public spaces. We can talk also about lively city centers as well as qualitative or affordable housing. And if I can stop on this topic of housing, because included in depopulated areas, the lack of affordable housing is certainly one of the most critical challenges that local policies have to tackle to stop the demographic bleeding, if you can call it like that. But the message is that it's not inevitable that small towns and cities face demographic shrinking. And I mean, the case of Soria, you will hear about it, is a very good example. There are policies that have proved being effective in both retaining people to live, but also for attracting people. When they attract people, and I think it was also said at some point this morning, it's mainly people from the surrounding towns or villages. And then in that situation, we face a bit the same type of tension that could exist between a regional capital city and the medium-sized small town and towns in the same regions. And that is the reason why the coordination and the common strategy between the different levels is so important, and including also from the perspective of a small town. It has been noted in particular in our work that the need for territorial cooperation for the delivery of services of general interest is particularly crucial for small towns, and this is claiming for a reinforced alignment between the different levels of public authorities. But the problem is that the distribution of competencies between the different territorial levels is different from one country to another, it's one thing, and also that depending on the cases, the decentralization of competencies can come along with what also local authorities could consider as insufficient resources in regard to manage the more and more services that the population needs and expects. So one way to tackle this issue is to mutualize resources and to offer more administrative and technical support to the smaller towns and cities. Indeed, because even in those cities that I mentioned that are considered a bit as success stories, like administrative complexity, limited local capacities are considered also here as important barriers for delivering efficient policies. And in particular, the lack of qualified technical staff at the local level is perceived, it's also constant, as a crucial to manage administrative issue with more agility and efficiency. In some of the cases that we looked at as well, the role played by European funds has been key to understanding also the urban transformation of the cities and those towns. But of course, beyond the need for attracting EU funding, there's more in general, any type of public funding is welcome from those places to attract investment flows, private investment in the cities. But however, function of the available local capacities, I would say that the most important message out of all the analysis that we made is that place-based approaches, integrated territorial strategies remain the privilege point for policies implemented in those small towns. You will read and you will hear today about many ideas for policies to be implemented in those small towns. In the paper, we are listing several of them that are currently implemented in different territorial contexts, local, regional, national, etc. And for instance, so I can just mention some of them. For instance, the need for rethinking the financial instruments that small towns could activate and manage, not only at EU level, but also at the national and more regional level. The development, I said, of integrated strategy at the scale of functional rural areas, also for providing services, job, mobility, and so on, is something important. Favoring capacity building for local authorities, encouraging participatory approaches to embed the local civil society in transformative processes, And also, and this is very ESPON, but the commissioner, I can say that because the commissioner said it also this morning, to improve the delivery of data and evidence to inform territorial strategy at the right scale. So, however, and I conclude here, I would like to make a sort of a synthetic proposal that could apply to most of the cases we encountered in our research. One could call it a pact. Juana, you call it a territorial contract. It could take many forms. It could take many names. It could have like many different content. But to strengthen the role and the positioning of small towns, I think, and we think out of the research, that they would benefit from an integrative policy instrument which could help them supporting interterritorial cooperation in their local and regional environment as well, entering also an enhanced logic of public-private cooperation and eventually embedding sectoral policies in the view of reinforcing socio-territorial cohesion in their area. And in addition, and to conclude, I would insist on the following approaches that have been identified as efficient policy pathways for supporting small and medium-sized towns and cities in general, with 4 types of approach. One is more methodological. I mentioned it already: promoted, integrated, place-based methods, tools. This is key. Through capacity building. Capacity building is also key, developing local skills, administrative capacities. Third, thinking in terms of targets, being more targeted in the way we approach these policies, funding targeted development strategies, and eventually, by and with the people, supporting the local networks for mutual learning and empowerment. And thank you for your attention.
Many thanks. Many thanks to Nicolas. Now? Yes. Many thanks, Nicolas, for summarize in 10 minutes all the efforts of this policy brief. I remember to the audience that you can use Slido. Please, question, comments, anything that you think it's important to enrich our analysis and recommendation. When we think about this session and we discuss with ESPON, we think that it would be very important to count with another institution, vision, approach, as an institution called the Joint Research Center. This is one of the main centers that we obtain many data, many information to build and to develop these public policies. So, Julia Testori, thank you very much for being here. You share with the audience about the policy atlas of sustainable urban development for small urban areas. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you very much, Juana. Gracias. Gracias a la Presidencia Española. Gracias a ESPON por organizar este evento tan interesante, estimulante. Voy a pasar al inglés, perdón. So what I would like to present you today, it's this policy atlas that we did at the JRC. Just very quickly, a little bit of policy background that we haven't mentioned so far. So there is a growing recognition of SUA, small urban areas, in the EU policy discourse. There was the Riga Declaration in 2015 that acknowledges as a SUA in ensuring the balanced development, but there is already since 1999 with the European Spatial Development Perspective that represent one of the earliest mentions of the SUA, emphasizing their role in creating a balanced and polycentric urban system. What I would like to really point out is the role of cohesion policy that represents the main source of EU funding, promoting specific measures devoted to sustainable development, and specifically PO5 of 21-27. I cannot change it. Yeah, sorry about this. Well, I will continue for 1 second. It's about our report that was created and written in collaboration with DG Regio. So the report targets policymakers, local authorities, practitioners, and academics to better understand the unique characteristics of small urban areas. The aim of this report is to provide, and you cannot see, yes, thank you. Is to promote is to provide a compass for navigating the policy challenges of the specific territories by offering evidence-based insights and practical recommendation. The atlas, and what I will present you very quickly now, is divided into three main parts. Yeah, one back. Yeah, no. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Here we are. So it's divided into three parts. So we have one that is more about providing a definition, because there are many definitions of what small urban areas can, and showing you a little bit the development challenges, the main ones. The second one is about uncovering the many policy approaches. And then the third one, it's more an analysis of how cohesion policies has been contributed to its development. So it has been mentioned already various times that SUA hold a strategic importance, that they form this polycentric urban structure, fostering harmonious developments. So if we think of small urban areas, we can see two main categories. No? When they are located near large urban areas, they normally act as satellites, offering, for example, could be as the case of Cuenca, maybe more affordable housing to the main city, a more relaxed place to live. But there are other situations where the small urban areas actually act as a hub for the other, even smaller rural areas, offering services and economic development. And they play a vital role in strengthening the urban-rural linkages. I won't go into details, but let's say this is the definition we use. So a small urban area is between 5,000 inhabitants and 50,000 inhabitants with a density that goes above 300 inhabitants per square kilometers. We use the degree of urbanization that I don't know if you all know what it is. Inside the atlas, we dig a little bit into those definitions. But let's see a little bit of population change in small urban areas. I think that the first data is very important. If we look at the period between 2011 and 2018, we can see just 1.4% of small urban areas population increased. So it's really nothing. But we have on the other side a strong tide of population shrinkage. So it's about an area that experienced population loss, economic downturn, employment decline, social problems are all symptoms of a structured crisis. Why this is happening? This happened for globalization forces, for space-blind neoliberal policy. Thank you, Mercedes Molina, for your presentation. I think you presented this aspect in a very clear and inspiring way. And then, so this is why small urban areas are actually declining. But if we look at access to services, for example, health services, the situation in Croatia, France, and Spain, actually it's one of the most disadvantaged situation to access to services if you're comparing it to health services access in urban areas. What does it happen? Not being able to access such relevant services fosters a way increases Euroscepticism. So there are many reasons. There is also the broadband speed. No, we see that in small urban areas there is a connectivity gap. But why there is such a connectivity gap? There is a lack of willingness and lack of funding to digitalize public services. So there is a bias between technological innovation, prioritizing cities rather than small urban areas. But it's not just about that, it's also about digital skills and a cultural acceptance of how relevant is digitalization. So I think that this is probably the most interesting part of the report. I won't have time to go deep, but let's say after studying many case studies, there are more than 50 quoted inside the report. There are 7 fishes, let's say, where we dig a little bit more. We identified, let's say, 5 policy approaches. So they are in order to reverse the decline trends. This analysis, let's say, takes policy approaches that are not sectorial. They are multidimensional, touching upon different policy areas. So let's see, for example, the first one. The first one is about reactivating places for people and community. What does it mean? It's about working with buildings, let's say, or working with the empty land that are commonly underused. It's about for triggering an importance of socio-economical sector. It seems a little bit as a traditional approach, but there are new trends based on self-organization, for example, on commoning, on community-led, on the possibility of using mapping for activating different kinds of stakeholder. And the reactivation process goes beyond the main physical regeneration itself. And it is extremely important that this process is done taking in mind the huge risk of gentrification. The second policy approach is about risk discovery uniqueness. I think that definitely Cuenca it's a case. No, I'm sure what I'm talking about is about identifying the distinctiveness of the place, of the cultural value that the place can offer. It's about heritage assets. It's about emphasizing their intrinsic smallness as leverage for more authentic, for more healthy, closer to nature lifestyle. Then we have a third measure that is about reconnecting with nature. It's not just about accessing to green areas, but it's about creating green for the benefit of the community using the natural assets to fight climate change. It's about innovation in bioeconomy. It's about safeguard food and energy. And it's about also think constantly of circular economy. We have then a fourth approach that is about reinventing smart public spaces. I mentioned you before the topic of the high-speed broadband. That is, of course, crucial, but it's also about thinking how to monitor the well-being of the residents in these areas. And finally, reimagining governance and partnership. So this is about fostering the well-functioning, innovative institution, about cooperating with the larger urban areas, so really pushing for FUA, functional urban areas. It is about thinking of governance as a process of co-creation, of community involvement, of the quadruple helix, so really involving different kinds of stakeholders, even in small urban areas, and to give also always important to the measurements of not just quantitative data, but also the qualitative one. As I mentioned, there are lots of case studies. Just a very quick overview on the impact that cohesion policy has on these areas. So we have a platform that is called Stratboard, where we identify and map all the strategies, urban and non-urban strategies funded by the cohesion policy. And we can see that actually towns are the ones that are receiving the 49.7% of these funds. So just know to have an overview of how this is crucial. And then the aspect that sustainable urban development strategy targeting towns are not evenly distributed. In different countries, we see completely different approaches. I think that lots can be learned in case studies that focus overall on how cohesion policies has been helped all these aspects and how this can be really a leverage to escape from the downturn and depopulation. Those are the case studies. There is one also in Spain, Lucena. It's a really, really interesting study from Andalusia. And I will go to the key messages. It is really important to work again on cross-sectorals and to identify which is the specific common trend of that small urban areas. We cannot say that there is a solution that fits all. In order to do this, at the very beginning, when thinking of the strategy, when thinking of the vision, it's about having established a strong conceptual framework. Try to identify which are the outstanding values of that specific areas. And in order to make a springboard for creating synergies and pooling resources. And finally, allocating resources to public consultation, it's crucial. It might doesn't look like from the beginning, but on the long term, it really what has an impact of in a long run. In order to do this, local administration for small urban areas do need capacity building. Together with DG Regio, together with the European Urban Initiative, us at the Joint Research Center, we have been pushing for different activities. For example, the territorial peer reviews, the sustainable urban development peer reviews, all those city-to-city partnership, all those are tools that you can discover in our website. So finally, this is the report. I need to thank very much the colleagues who wrote it with me, which is Carlotta Fioretti and Pierpaolo Saraceno and Carolina Perpigna. And please, if you do have any question, you would like to cooperate, you would like to bring other case studies, contact us or myself directly. Thank you so much.
Julia. It's not the third time, always. Many thanks, Julia. Creo que las conclusiones que planteas. I think that the conclusions that you have presented clearly mark the direction for the next participant, our next speaker, Valentina Corsetti, who is in charge of several programs in the DG region. You will have the presentation on the screen very soon. You have 30 seconds. I want to devote 30 seconds to thank you for your help throughout these months in order to build and to tackle that shared challenge related to the incorporation of Spain to the regional funds for achieving the important goals that we have for the sustainable development of the rural areas. And we have seen in our first part of these seminars recommendations, and now we're going to an analysis, and we're going to move on to the instruments, to the tools. We need the best diagnosis, but also the best frameworks in terms of budget and the tools. Thank you. Thank you also for the Ministry of Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge, and thank you all for having me here in Cuenca. I was thinking of speaking in English, but I'm going to profit from the fact that we have interpreters with us, so I will take the opportunity of addressing you in Spanish. And as Juana said, I'm going to speak about something very specific. I have heard different claims from the academia, politicians, mayors, the Secretary General for the demographic challenge, and you have all been reclaiming and calling for funds and for different methodologies. And I will explain what are the roles
of the SMTCs in the framework of the cohesion policy in Spain. We want to promote the territorial cohesion in the next period. And so this is our starting point, the Spanish Partnership Agreement. It is clearly indicated that we have a high degree of urbanization in Spain. 80% of the population in Spain is living in areas that occupy 20% of the territory, as Nuria was saying before. This is a map of the transport, mobility and urban agenda ministry, and you can see the high concentration around Madrid and in the coastal areas. But you can also see that there are several medium-sized cities that have a key role in the vertebration of the territory. We know through the statistics institution that we have in 2022, we had above 8,000 municipalities in Spain, out of which 60% have less than 1,000 inhabitants. And these are urban areas that are losing population inhabitants. So we wanted to tackle these disparities, territorial disparities, caused by the distribution of the population in Spain. So we have the challenges of the big cities on the one hand, with the pressure on the natural resources that this entails, the higher housing costs, troubles with mobility. And on the other hand, we have territories that are very small, that are fighting for keeping the population to promote and provide public services and provide economic opportunities to the population. And if we look closer, which is the work that I have been doing in the past years, preparing the negotiations about the matter of the depopulation in Spain, the map that I'm presenting here, it's the map on the regarding the 8th cohesion report, and I have looked the historic data that we have, and we see that the situation is quite the same. There are many states on the right, on the eastern side of the European Union that are most affected by the depopulation issue. We have also looked into the lower level and the administrative unit where the issue is even worse in Spain. We have seen that the depopulation issue has evolved. In the 1960s, this meant a rural exodus. The people left to the rural areas to look for better opportunities in the urban areas. However, we have seen in the most recent years that the smaller cities and some mid-sized cities that used to gain population are also now losing population. So also we are seeing that the medium-sized cities are losing their strengths, and this leads to the protests that we have seen not only in Spain but around Europe. There have been many cases of population that want to have the same rights as in the cities. What we have called in Spain the España vaciada, or the hollowed Spain, and this also gives lure to an environment of skepticism, and we know that the people living in very small cities feel abandoned, and they feel more skeptical with regards to the national institutions and the European institutions. So when started working with the case of Spain, I understood that we needed to give more visibility to these issues, because they're not only important for the development of these small municipalities, but also for the whole of the country. So in 2019, we managed to bring up these topics in the framework of the European semester, because this gave some visibility to the depopulation issue. This has been mentioned since 2019 in all the reports, and we also have drafted a document that helps us set the pillars for the negotiation of the policies between 21-27. What have been doing in Spain based on this context? We have the political objective, which is number 5, investing in territorial strategies that are integrated And there are two sides to this. On the one hand, the integrated urban development, we see that there's a thematic concentration so that 8% of the ER and DF budget needs to be devoted to this development. But we also have another specific goal, the 5.2, that tackles the rest of the challenges in the rest of the territories and it deals with the Article 174 of the treaty. We wanted to have certain investment in terms of the funds that could be limited, but at the same time important in order to give more visibility to the issue of depopulation in Spain. So concerning the 5.1, the ministry has been analyzing the characteristics of the Spanish territory, and we have determined that there are three types of cities, being the big above 25,000 inhabitants, medium-sized cities are between 20,000 and 75,000 inhabitants, and we have created also the concept of the functional urban areas, where we know that we're going to be investing in hubs that have globally around 20,000 inhabitants, with having a main municipality with at least 10,000 inhabitants, where we want to invest in the rural areas specifically. And now, for the first time in the national program that gathers most of the funding related to the territorial development, we have identified that the 40 to 60% of the federal funds are aimed at the medium-sized cities based on their important role in the polycentric development. And we will keep this category of functional urban areas of between 5 to 15% of the funds. So globally speaking, we are talking about these funds being aimed at the middle-sized and small cities. Regarding the 5.2 aspect, where the ministry in charge is the ministry in charge of the ecological transition and the demographic challenge, we have been able to save some funds to develop pilot projects in the framework of territorial strategies in 4 autonomous regions, 3 that are less developed, Andalucía, Extremadura, and Castilla-La Mancha, and also Castilla-León. And we also want to tackle here the challenges of the municipalities with less than 10,000 inhabitants that are also working on the perspective of the functional urban area, having the municipalities of municipal authorities and supra-municipal authorities that also have a role to play in order to support the small municipalities to develop their strategies and implement them, but understanding that they did not have to replace them in their authorities. But having the goal in mind of having these limited funds, but being able to replicate these pilot programs in other areas. So this would be the foundations regarding the political objective number 5, but there are also sectorial investments that go through the integrated urban development and also the regional programs. In Spain, the regional programs have not dealt with the policy objective number 5, except for a few cases. We have, for instance, 5.2 specific objective in Catalonia. And we have negotiated certain mechanisms that we need to define more specifically now when we are considering the eligibility criteria. We need to see that these funds are not creating new inequalities, and we want to see this budget arriving to all sorts of territories. We could think of any sort of positive discrimination in order to have these conceptions included in the eligibility criteria. And there are many things that can be done within the policy objective number 5 and also outside of it. Now, to deal very briefly with the challenges, first of all, the integrated territorial planning. I think that we are quite ahead in this sense. We believe that the recovery plan, and this is a good example of complementarity of the CEDAR, has funded 120 pilot programs, but we also need to move forward in terms of the territorial integration and the planned integrated territorial development. We have used some mechanisms very little in Spain. There were not many incentives for this. Many municipalities wanted or preferred to run on their own instead of joining forces and creating a system to have a dialogue between different authority levels cooperating. We wanted to overcome this problem. This is why we have the functional urban areas incorporated, and we have also considered functional urban areas within the policy object 5.2 to have. I don't want to talk too much or to elaborate about the complementarity with other types of funds, but there exist we have from the social cohesion policies a bottom-up approach. So we need to consider at a local level, how can we bring these funds within and move them within this framework that we're discussing here. We also need to talk about the multi-level governance that is very important also in the urban area where we see different competences, and we need to think this over very well so that we can have a real multi-level governance aim. And also, we have discussed in length the administrative capacity. We have discussed this with the ministry in order to implement the agreement of the association policies. We need to administrate and manage better the administrative capacity from the local authorities and governments, but we need to think with the intermediate organisms how we can reinforce the managerial capacity and administrative capacity. We need to refocus some of these systems to support the program between 21-27 and also to serve as a connection between the national local levels to the European mechanisms. Globally speaking, this is what we can see in the coming years. I think that we are moving in the right direction in terms of proposals and the planning, but we need to be very mindful when it comes to the deployment so that we ensure that we keep in track. And I am open to the discussion. I will leave it at this now. Thank you very much.
Ahora va, la segunda. Muchísimas gracias,
Thank you, Valentina. I must share with all participants here that for us, for the General Secretary of Demographic Challenge, since we are a new executive unit by this government, it was a challenge to be part of this regional framework and work with regional funds. I am sure that you would all be aware that we had a great ally at the other side who knows inside out the needs that local councils and small and medium-sized cities have in their capacity building so that they are not excluded from those processes. We witnessed and lived this as an opportunity, a complex one, of course, but as an opportunity that we want to share with other countries across the EU that are working on this political objective 5.2. So we will look forward to articulating this
first part of the session of this segment, and now we continue the session with the trio of presidencies for the last period. It's an honor to count with you with Italy, Luxembourg, and Latvia. The idea is that you share with the audience, the experience, the work that you developed during your presidencies. So we'll start with Luisa Pedrazzini from Italy. So Luisa, when you want to take the floor.
I must thank you the Spanish presidency and the ESPON program to be part in this seminar, this very exciting seminar for a planner. And then I will contribute, I hope, with a useful contribute with the Italian experience. I hope that this works. Yes. So after the trio presidency, Italy was engaged to develop the issues of inner peripheries. The background is known, the Article 174, that pay attention to particular area and region, important for the balance of the European context, in the European context. The Territorial Agenda 2020, the mom of the present Territorial Agenda that stressed the concept of place-based, as referred mainly on the financial investment on territories. And the 8th cohesion report in the between of the last and the new programming period that states that certain smaller cities, towns, and places are important also for the rest, for the surrounding. So Italy decided to develop a specific strategy for inner areas. As you can see, the name periphery was replaced with inner, and I will show you in a visible way why. And the name, the acronym is SNIA, during the period of 1420. The aim is to counteract the demographic decline. Many of the things I'm going to do, I try to short because you well known. Many of you, many of the rapporteur have stressed this item. Loss of population, loss of economic activity, or economic opportunities for this territory, and so on. The novelty for Italy to approach these issues is that the historical duality approach north-south in Italy, north developed, south underdevelopment, that was approached mainly by economic indicator, GDP, and so on, changed in this case because it was addressed to the spatial character of the territory. And on the other aspect, also finalizing the gathering of resource from different sources to the spatial character of these territories with specific project. So that means project territorial oriented. So the inner areas are fragile territories, mainly the remoteness means far from main center. That means travel time spent in travel, lack of public service of general interest, transport, but also other kind of services, healthcare, education. And this is the well-known aspect. The other aspect is that this territory, I'm speaking on it, Italy, but probably it is valid for many other countries, are territories rich of resource, water, forest, landscape, physical and immaterial heritage. Many areas in Italy, many remote areas in Italy are former economic centers. I'm in 20th and 19th century. Some of them are the place of the birth of the Italian economy, but they are missed. Economy moved to other places. And so this is a very important aspect to pay attention. They were classified in intermediate, peripheral, ultra-peripheral. In this picture, you can see in the graduation of blue, light, and the 3 levels of internal area as designed in the strategy. As you can see, more than 50%, and so I was in some way happy that it is a confirmation of other picture already shown. 52% of municipalities belongs to this area, 22%, but over the 60% of national surface. Mainly mountain and hills, so the large majority in this case. This is not my presentation. No, I shortened. I mean, I'm sorry because I sent another presentation, a shortened presentation. This is a picture just to compare with the result of the project. That's one. I'm sorry because I would like to focus on the final comments, and I don't know if they're here anyway. It's not a problem. Under this area, the SNAI selected the area to apply the strategy, restricting this area only on some specific a number of selected area. And one step was related to identify those balls that has the potential to serve a larger area. And then the area was further classified in a further level of typology. Okay. It was further added another level of character indicators. That is the land morphology index. That is a physical index that link the remoteness with the role of the center, the capacity of the role that is the higher. And this restricted the area for the interventions. And here you can say that these municipalities yes, belong mainly to mountains and hills, the high level, and they have mainly less than 5,000 inhabitants each municipalities. That is over the average of Italy, that is 30, the morphology of mountains. This area includes some other. So the pilot areas approved in the SNAI strategy were 72. The area is restricted. 2 million inhabitants are involved, but a grid surface is involved about 70% of the surface. And again, it's easy to note that all Italy is involved. Not grid variant in the sense that the southern part engage more resource compared to the north. And the 2 main typology of intervention are included in the strategy. Service of general interest, as you know, but also intervention for local development. And this part is very tailored on the different typology of group of area involved, from agricultural to forestry to PA efficiency and transparency, renewable energy, transport, territorial safety. The present, the SNAI 1420 is not finished, is under realization. It's a very challenging, it was a very challenging strategy for Italy. But in the same time, the new programming period started. And the decision was to confirm the character of a long-term strategy, maintaining the main structure of the strategy 1420, confirm part of the area involved in the first strategy, redesign part of other areas, and enlarge the concept of peripherality or inner, involving also some part of the plain, some remote areas or inner periphery of the plain, not only mountain, and the new is a specific strategy for little islands in the Mediterranean Sea that were not considered in the previous. Now the area is enlarged, 124 projects area are defined. This is a very early stage. And doubled also the inhabitants involved. So this is the picture of the area, and there is a new input, a new keywords, agenda del controesodo, because it means a specific address on counteract the depopulation of this area. I missed that also other aspects were considered to design the new area, that was other indicators, related to the performance, not only statistical data, performance, capacity of these territories to reach the result, and capacity to cooperate. And this is the link, the bridge or the overlapping between the smallest town and in areas. It's quite easy. I mean, this is an overlapping of small municipalities that, in Italian case, means the little size of the ranking, 5,000 inhabitants, and the little included in the SNAI. Again, this is just to repeat. I don't want to go. Yes, at the final. Final is that in Italy, this concept is very stressed. If the average in Europe is, Italy is really a country of small and medium municipalities, that means 5,000 or less. We have a ranking in a small that goes from 25,000 inhabitants in South Italy, more polarized, to 29 inhabitants in one municipalities in the mountain areas in the Alpine. But this means also another interesting thing in my opinion. 70% of population, that means 70% of municipalities, is in charge of about more than half of the territory, the space. And this area suffer of population. But this area is mainly part of is an area of environmental importance. All these municipalities are located in Natura 2000 sites, regional parks, national park, space territory of environmental importance. And in some way, this is the hidden aspect, the shadow elements that to be in some way put in evidence, strengthened. So if one aspect is, yes, these areas, but this area means 5,000 inhabitants in Italy, but in other place could be other size in between, can be hub of a more large territory, and they must be supported for their role. On the other aspect, we have to reinforce the meaning of place-based approach, enlarging the concept of environmental capital, the value of this territory, recognizing the shadow value that they practice every day in their role against landslide, against territorial problem, erosion, territorial erosion. You know, agriculture in the mountain is fundamental to maintain the safety territory. They deliver ensuring ecosystem service, but they are not recognized for their fundamental task. So, closing, I think that rather than the revenge of places that don't matter, probably we can assert that they have to reveal their really, why they really matter. And this is very important for the, not the future, the present condition to sustain the environmental challenge in Europe. Thank you. The last, my preferred village in the mountain.
Don't worry, you can sing later. So thank you very much, Luisa, and I apologize because I didn't introduce you at the beginning. Luisa is from the National Institute for Urban Planning in Italy. So thank you very much. I'll now pass the word to Christine Cato, Minister of the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Regional Development of Latvia, that she shared with us the challenge of small and medium-sized urban areas. Maybe you can use this.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. First of all, we would say that we welcome the initiative of the Spanish presidency to pay the attention to the role of the medium-sized and small-sized cities with a wider territorial perspective. This is specifically significant for Latvia, as we are also a small country with a population less than 2 million, and only 5 of our 82 cities have a population bigger than 50,000 inhabitants. I'm here also to represent what was done in the trio together with Italy and Luxembourg, and taking into account the population and cities size in Latvia. Of course, the priority of Latvian presidency in the Council of European Union in 2015 was the small and medium-sized cities. In that regard, I can mention the most relevant outcomes up to today. One of them was, of course, to start with the survey of challenges that are faced in small and medium-sized cities, including their economic growth potential and impact on the territorial development of the whole EU. And it was prepared in a close collaboration with all the national experts from Social, Economic and Humanities Research Institute, and of course with the help of ESPON. And as Julie already mentioned, the key outcome is the Riga Declaration, which was a step towards EU urban agenda. The policy statement document where intergovernmental agreement was reached towards the importance of the small and medium-sized cities. Just to highlight some more key conclusions that were made during the presidency about the small and medium-sized urban areas. Of course, they fulfilled the very important economic and social functions, being the centers, both for jobs, also for services, and nodes for the transport. Therefore, they are very essential to avoid the rural depopulation and urban drift, because they promote the overall balanced regional development. They also contribute to the development of metropolitan areas and are being connected in a polycentrical network. There is a significant existing and potential collective contribution of small and medium-sized cities to the common EU strategic goals, especially regarding the employment, climate change, energy sustainability, and of course social issues as fighting poverty and social exclusion. So many small and medium-sized urban areas face a range of common challenges that need to be addressed at different governance levels. Of course, those are declining and aging populations, emigration of young people, low economic activity and diversity, lack of highly educated and skilled labor, job creation, access to the services, insufficient connectivity and lack of access to the financial resources and capital investments. There are also significant development potentials that need to be utilized. There are great opportunities to balance the economic activity and quality of life aspects, being more flexible and shift towards the agility and policy innovation and experimentation in these kind of territories. It's also important to foster diversification of economic activities and go towards smart specialization to find the solutions for provision of qualitative, accessible and cost-efficient public services, foster urban, rural, also urban, and overall cross-border cooperation within the functional areas, and generally to improve the attractiveness of the territory. Of course, strong capacity of local authorities and active involvement of local communities and stakeholders are essential in this regard. It is also important to provide territorial support measures that are comprehensive and flexible enough to enable any type of the territory and make the most of the territorial potentials. So these and other elements were considered when preparing Latvian national regional development policy after 2020. So the thing is that Latvia doesn't have a separate urban policy as a document. Urban policy is the part of the regional development, whose aim is to ensure the balanced territorial development. It defines the priorities, directions, and also support measures for all territories of Latvia, as well as achievable results. And urban areas play an important role in Latvia as drivers for economic and social development. In total, 30 urban areas are defined as the national and regional development centers, and they are the driving forces for regional development and set the basis for the overall national polycentric development structure and are interlinked in a functional network of development centers. Their role has increased after the administrative territorial reform, which was finalized just recently in 2021, where urban centers with national and regional importance were established as administrative centers of the wider rural areas, ensuring some main public services, work and leisure opportunities, also for people from rural areas, thus strengthening these urban-rural relations through the functional linkages. Specific support instruments from various sources are being implemented to strengthen these centers within a wider territory. Regional policy also includes the measures co-financed by EU cohesion policy. It's chosen to be implemented via a mechanism of functional urban areas. Accordingly, there are functional areas defined in regional level development programs, which are elaborated by 5 planning regions. And the main criteria for identifying these functional urban areas were as follows: commuting time, network of public services, including accessibility of public services and the scale of these services. The funding to the functional urban areas is provided under the 5th policy objective of the EU regulation, which is Europe closer to the citizens. It's about 9% of the overall RDF funding that is earmarked for this sustainable development of cities and their functional areas. Thematically, this support initiatives focuses on fostering economic development, accessibility and availability of jobs and services. New initiatives includes quality of life, including the qualitative public space, smart solutions, and also increasing capacity for specialists in local and regional levels is identified, and work on goes there as well. So if we speak about the local level, then integrated local development programs are the basis to attract the support at the municipal level. The success for the local development programs is that they are prepared on multi-level and multi-stakeholder approach, considering a very wide thematic dimension, territorial dimension, of course, the time dimension. The local municipalities decide on their investment projects based on these dimensions, including social, economic, and environmental aspects, as well as cooperation with the surrounding territories, other local governments, regionals, and also international cooperation. Such elements as orientation on common good, integrated approach, participation and co-creation, multi-level governance, and a place-based approach are the key for successful policy and good governance. And those are implemented in the regional policy. Just to mention some main elements from the Latvian regional policy which we consider as a success. One is the legal framework that defines the clear development planning system, includes the principles for effective cooperation and engagement and planning of governance. Then, of course, administrative territorial reform, which was created to ensure the rational territorial division around the development centers with intention for higher financial and administrative capacity in each municipality. Regional policy support instruments are based on the development gaps, and its intervention logic defines achievable results that are contributing to the overall territorial development. Also, instruments for society engagements and policy development and implementation, public hearings, councils of inhabitants, as well as participatory budget is in place. If we consider from the last document we have adopted, it's in 2022, an informative report about the changes of socioeconomic situation and results of the administrative territorial reform was adopted by the government, and it includes the general assessment of the network of the development centers. And it's interesting that according to the overall assessment, it was concluded that social and economic development measures have been improved at the development centers in the last decade. Netto salary, for example, has increased in the national development centers for 69% and for the regional development centers for the 74%. Meanwhile, there is a negative tendency for the decrease of number of inhabitants. It continues to decrease from 13 to 15% every year. So accordingly, of course, yes, I'm concluding. Accordingly, we see that demographic challenges are the things to focus also on the future EU-level policies and initiatives. The future support should contribute to the implementation of different national reforms and address the most pressing challenges territories are facing, including all social, economic, environmental, and of course, the security dimension. Thank you.
Many, many thanks, Christine. I'm sorry because we have a little bit delay, so please, Gerard from Luxembourg, please.
So, first of all, I would like to thank the presidency for having given us the opportunity to share some reflections on the work that has been done by Luxembourg in the presidency trio, and also giving us the opportunity to reminisce somewhat nostalgically about the good old days of the Luxembourgish presidency. So, just to give you a quick general context, the Luxembourgish presidency was implemented in the presence of a border that was no longer seen as an obstacle, but instead perceived as an asset to further the interests of all parties. The progressive opening of borders in the European Union, carried by the globalization of economic exchanges, offered the development opportunities to urban border regions. The role of Interreg in strengthening cross-border cooperation was also enhanced, allowing actors in urban border territories to develop cross-border cooperation mechanisms that have grown in importance ever since that time. On this point, I would also like to mention the increased role of Interreg capacities for the 21-27 period, where functional areas are also now being able to be implemented, and the Interreg Greater Region program and also the program France-Spain in Interreg both finance these functional areas. The Luxembourgish presidency highlighted the potential of small and medium-sized cities in cooperating across the border, and here I would like to mention the ESPON Metro Border Study, which deserves a specific mention since it already in the 2010s analyzed the concept of cross-border polycentric regions, which is a concept of specific importance for Luxembourg, as it refers to the structure of polycentric networks that, for instance, allow small and medium-sized cities across borders to reach the critical mass for unlocking their development potential. A second contribution was the commissioning of a study by the Luxembourg Institute for Socioeconomic Research on the opportunities of cross-border cooperation between small and medium cities in Europe. The aim of the Luxembourgish presidency was to further promote the potential of small and medium-sized cities in cross-border polycentric regions as a strategy towards meeting the challenges of critical mass. Finally, the Luxembourg presidency conclusions also highlighted three potentials for smart and medium cities, but more on that in a little bit. So, how to gain critical mass by cooperating across the border? Well, it goes through combining the know-how, the means and resources within those borders in order to then gain the already mentioned critical mass. As we already heard from other speakers this morning, not all regions are the same, so there are different factors that can influence the level of cross-border integration across Europe. You have the geographical context, such as the membership of political or economic or transnational structures, spatial configurations of small and medium-sized cities in the cross-border region. You have cross-border governance structures that are also an important factor. If there are exist shared objectives, the use of interpersonal relations is also a very important factor in that case. Finally, there also needs to be a feeling of a shared and common cross-border living area. So if to feel a part of this area in order to drive forward any kind of closer integration across the border. Of course, there are also some challenges in developing strategies, most notably the lack of a formal framework, institutional mismatch between the different stakeholders on either side of the border, the difference of strategic priorities across the borders, and also the difference in planning cultures. Some of the case studies that were done in that study from the list include 21 instances of cross-border cooperation, and don't worry, I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to use two. To note, unfortunately, not all of those 21 instances were successful. However, they all shared similar aims, which were to improve the relationships with their neighbors and to construct a common future. So to quickly just mention the first case study, which was the Bayonne-San Sebastian region between France and Spain, whose cross-border cooperation project of the Basque Eurocity at the time aimed at articulating and framing the urban continuum in order to create an integrated city. Whoops. A second case study is the region of Alzette-Belleval between Luxembourg and France, where the cross-border agglomeration around the cities of Esch-sur-Alzette and Villerue in France shared a common history and which was linked to the steel industry, which with the decline of the steel industry towards the end of the 1990s also meant that the Luxembourgish government had to invest heavily to maintain the attractiveness of the region, and then decided to convert the brownfields of the old steel plants in that area and create a high-density living area, as well as implant the University of Luxembourg, as well as a number of other administrations within that area. And on the side of the French town, there were developments in the construction of an eco-city to complement the industrial compensation on the Luxembourg side. So, the presidency conclusions, as I said, there were three major ones. The presidency encouraged national authorities to integrate cross-border development strategies into national, transnational, and European development strategies to improve multi-level and cross-border sector coordination and foster long-term commitment to cross-border cooperation. It also called for a knowledge exchange that could spread innovative solutions regarding effective multi-level governance and the involvement of the business sector as well as civil society, and also pointed to the lack of comparable national as well as cross-border data that would provide a shared understanding of the potentials and challenges given cross-border region and would help actors to define cross-border development strategies. So, and on this point, I would just like to take another minute just to elaborate a bit on what has happened since. As I already mentioned, the Commission has quite nicely provided the legal framework for the functional areas, allowing for cross-border cooperation in a much more localized and effective manner. And you also have other initiatives like the B-Solutions initiative from the Association of European Border Regions, who also works on the area in this area to help reduce barriers in cross-border cooperation. On the note of comparable national data, here there is also a lot of work that's being done on the regional level as well as more widely with the establishment after 2015 of the Geographical Information System for the Greater Region, the setup of the Interregional Labour Market Observatory, and the setting up of the Statistical Working Group of the Summit of the Executives of the Greater Region. And on this point, I would also like to mention the Transfrontier Operational Mission, also known as the MOT, which is being financed by the French government, and also the Federal Office of Building and Regional Planning, the BBSR, that is being financed by the German government, who also work to alleviate issues in this area. So as you can see, there are many positive things that have happened. But there is still much work to be done, so we are very grateful to the Spanish presidency for having taken up this issue once again and bringing it to the forefront, and I hope that we can continue to have productive discussions during these 2 days of seminars, and I thank you very much for your time and attention.
Many thanks, Gerard, for your contribution. Many thanks for the 3 past presidencies. I know it's a little bit late. We are on a lunchtime in Spain. But we ask you for a little bit of patience because we finalized this session with 2 political reactions, with 2 magnificent mayors that are mayors on the small and size city towns in Croatia and in Spain, and also are members of the Committee of the Region, both of us. So please, Marco, start with you, so with your feedback, reaction of all over the question and issues that you listen during the session. Thank you very much, Marco, for joining to us.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, thank you very much. And first of all, I want to thanks for invitation here in this beautiful town of Cuenca, if I pronounce good. I'm first time, of course, here, and I'm very pleased that you are invited me here, also ESPON and the Spanish presidency of the European Union. I'm the Marko Vešliga, as said, the member of the European Committee of Region and also the mayor of one small city in Croatia. So I will start with a short introduction of this city. It is called Pregrada. It's 60 kilometers from the Zagreb. So if we talk about what we also heard today, we are definitely in this suburban area, and I will say that we don't know yet if we are a satellite or we are a hub. We are somewhere in between. Of course, I want to Pregrada be a hub, but it depends of our development of our country, because in Croatia we have the problem that Croatia is one of the countries in the European Union with the biggest regional disparities. For example, the capital Zagreb have the BDP per capita 3 times bigger than the most undeveloped region in our country. So Pregrada have the 6,000 inhabitants. We have 26 settlements. What is interesting that we are definitely the mix between urban, because in the city center where live some 2,000 inhabitants, we have the old features of the city with the square, with the streets, with all sorts of public services, and others 25 settlements are the villages. They don't have any urban features. I want to say that we are also the 3rd largest city or municipality in Krapina-Zagorje County, where we also belong. And I want to say, if we talk about what we heard today, that definitely all these small or urban areas or rural areas are definitely very heterogeneous, but and they today have the different features depend on the, of course, of location, of territorial context, on economic structure, but the challenges and the problems but the challenges and problems we're all sharing. Definitely the shrinking of the population, the brain drain, the problems with the housing, with the mobility, with the public services that definitely are not inadequate as they are in the cities, etc., etc. I organized, as a member of the Committee of Regions, some 3 weeks ago, one conference, and on that conference I inviting the young people, and that we have two topics. We talk about housing and mobility, because I think that those two topics are definitely maybe the most important if we want some perspective for our small urban areas, because without the young people we don't have I mean only the young people could give some new energy, some new ideas, new initiatives to these areas. Only if the young people stay on these areas. So in Pregrada, we are very proud that we are one of the 12 cities in Croatia that have the certificate, which is in Croatia calls the City for the Youth. It's certificate that not something that you get and okay, now we are city for the youth and that's it. You have the very measurable activities that, and after a few years, I think it's after 3 years, every 3 years, you have the certificate this. So those are measures definitely. They are including the housing, they are including the mobility. So on this conference, the young people are definitely, what was interesting for me, that they are very aware of this, that for example in these areas in Croatia we have the big problems with the houses that are abandoned. Of course, people who are living in the villages go to live in the cities, so their parents usually die, and that those houses are now staying alone. So they also gave the idea, why not to renovate these houses? And on that way you can renovate also the old space. If you talk about the mobility, the key point is it's probably not only in Croatia but in the European Union is the public transport. Because just compare what we on the European level do for the urban transport in the big cities. You have lots of funds that they are for I don't know, for the buses or such other things. But on the rural areas, we don't do nothing about this. But without this mobility, definitely we can also talk about some perspective of these territories. Since we don't have a time, I will conclude with one also very, for me, important issue that we also must offer, not only to the young people, but to the old people. This is include these people to the making decision process. And that's we do with the young people, especially in the Pregrada. For example, we have the participatory budgeting for the young people, where we're learning them about the political process. We're learning them what is the budget, how you're lobbying for some activities. And we do with them also the workshops. And after that, they have the real campaign and voting. And the best, those, of course, project that get the most votes go to the implementation from the money, by the money from the local budget. We also do the crowdfunding campaign of the public sector. With this crowdfunding campaign, we, for example, building the new tennis court. And people are, when people get some their own money, I mean, it's public money, it's all money from the people, but when they get their own money, I think that some public, for example, like this tennis court, some public fields are more appreciated from them. So I will now conclude. I want to say that we all here, you as the experts, we who are in politics on all levels, from the local, national to the European, had to give some also contribute to people stay the lift in these small or urban areas or the rural areas, because without this, all this what we build there, all infrastructure, that all investigation that we are planning on these areas don't have the sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marco. Vamos a terminar con la intervención
So now
del
with
alcalde de
the
Soria,
contribution from the
Carlos
mayor of
Martínez
Soria,
Mínguez.
Carlos
Yo solo
Martínez Mínguez,
aprovecho
and I would like to
unos
only
segundos
take the opportunity
por
and just a
supuesto
few seconds
agradecerle
to
la
thank him
participación
for
en el
his
seminario,
participation
pero también
clearly
para
in the seminar,
hacer un
but
pequeño
also
recordatorio
to
de cómo en el año 2016
give you a brief reminder of how
con el
in
alcalde de Soria, miembro del comité
2016,
del Consejo de
with
Municipios y
the
Regiones de
mayor of
Europa
Soria, who was
y
also a member
acompañándonos
of the
Mercedes
Committee
Molina,
of
catedrática
Municipalities,
emérita de
Municipality
Geografía Humana de
Mayors
la Universidad
of
Complutense,
Europe, and
empezamos a trabajar estos temas
the
juntos.
professor from
2016,
the
Mercedes, muy amable por toda la
Universidad
intervención y muchísimas gracias
Complutense,
por estar siempre
Mercedes,
apoyándonos
who
a la
delivered
Dirección
her
General y a la
presentation
Secretaría General.
earlier in the
Y cómo
session
pasan los
today.
años y de
We
repente
started
estamos
this
en un
project,
seminario
and
de
I
ESPON
wanted
hablando
to
de estas
highlight
cuestiones que tanto
how
nos
funny it is that
preocupaban y
after all
además
these years, we find ourselves
con un
together
alcalde
again
de una ciudad
talking
intermedia, de una
about
capital de
these topics that
provincia
are so important to
que como
us, so
se ha dicho a
dear
lo
to
largo del
us
día
in
de
this
hoy, es
Congress.
territorio de vulnerabilidades
In
socioterritoriales pero
Cuenca,
también de oportunidades, y
and
por eso también lo hemos querido llevar a este
discussing
Policy Report. Así que,
the
Carlos, también
this
muchísimas
small and
gracias
medium-sized
y vas a
cities
cerrar
and their
la sesión
issues.
porque
So,
tu turno es
Carlos, you're
de
going to be
gracias y
wrapping up the
gracias a todos.
session, because right after you finish, I'm going to say thank you, and we're going to go for lunch. Well, I'm definitely under much pressure since I'm the person who is between you and your lunch, and I want to try to say something new and keep you entertained before then. I will try to save you some time and tell you a little bit about Soria, the city of Soria, tell you about your weaknesses, your strengths, and clearly you're going to be you're going to make a mistake if you don't come and visit us, because you will be missing out on a lot of things. But also, I would like to discuss all this in the context in which we find ourselves nowadays. Wherever I have the opportunity of grabbing a microphone, I want to always make mention to all the war conflicts that are ongoing around the world, that are really despiteful, that are really a terrible situation, from the things that are happening in Gaza, in Ukraine, and all these things affect us directly, and they affect and they influence the model that we want to defend here today. So I would like to ask for a ceasefire. I would like to ask and call for the respect of the international rule of law. And I think that we, the local municipalities and local governments, also have to look forward, and take into account everything that is happening around the world. And also, I would like to express my gratitude to the Spanish presidency and Juan Paco for inviting me here and allowing me to participate and put the light on the small and medium-sized cities, who need to be the key element in order to try and solve the big challenges that we need to face now and looking forward. We cannot forget the fact that there is this new social contract that needs to be based on the real public policies that can allow us to translate all these big words into a real action plan, into real measures that we can implement on the ground. As Juana said before, I want to remember today, and I do this very moved by what I have been hearing here today. I want to recall 2016, when us, the three musketeers, Juana, Mercedes, and myself, stepped into council at a European level to talk about the concentration of population, the depopulation of certain areas. Mercedes was back then like a lone ranger talking about all the importance of all these human settlements and the need of having to pivot towards a new territorial organization, because this is what we are talking about here today, the need of changing this territorial organization. So this is why I say that I feel moved by the topics that has been discussed today when we have to face these big challenges. In order not to take too much of your time, I would like to focus on one of the main issues that I see after all the presentations that we have heard here today. I have seen the good practices that are being carried out and that can promote the development of territories. And we have heard also about the need of having a strategic planning, this organization of the territories, that we can call it urban agenda, we can call it what we want, but we need to be working from all the levels of the administration and change the model that we have been using up until now. We are handling sort of working from our own silos, and in this case we need to break the governance structures that we have seen historically in order to have governance structures that are much more horizontal, that we might be responsible at the municipal level of organizing the territory at our level, but we also need to think about the regional governments so that they do their job in terms of organizing the territory in a manner that generates new opportunities, that promote the creation of infrastructures to have the true regional competitiveness that we want to see. It's not only about ensuring the rights of the citizens that everyone should have in the small and medium-sized cities, the right to health, to education, to social protection, but it's all about also creating the pillars that promote development. So I want to ask for this snapshot that we need to have to bear in mind, and we need to think about the infrastructures that all the international organizations agree that are the ones that promote the development in the territories. There are the power creation, the railway, the technology, and the logistics, that all these are the axes around which all the planning need to be made. They need to be done at a national level, but also at the local level. So this is why the progress that we want to make, and that we have been discussing here, Valentina was talking about the way we can give access from the local areas to the European funds, so that we are not left aside when they make all these tenders or these competitive funds. So it is important that from all the different administration levels, we work together at a national level. And I have to insist in the exercise that I have mentioned before, because regional government does not plan the railway network of a country, or the municipality cannot plan the power network, for instance, or the technology or the logistic networks. In some cases this happens, but mostly it doesn't. So all these pillars that I was mentioning before are key for this development, and we need to promote development based on a territory that is organized in different areas, but not falling onto the trap of organizing territories based on the population. I will give you the example of my territory. If we set this threshold of less than 10,000 inhabitants, or more than 10,000 inhabitants, to having access to the funds, when we talk about my region, for instance, when we have 183 municipalities, only the capital city has more than 10,000 inhabitants, and the rest are around 5,000 inhabitants, 2, 3, 4 of them, and the rest are way below the 1,000 inhabitants. So I think that we really need to take into account the cities that have only 500 inhabitants. We really need to talk in terms of regions. And there are cities with less than 500 inhabitants that takes 30 minutes to access these municipalities. So this is not realistic. This is why I suggest that this in Spain, in order to establish the planning for the big infrastructures that provoke, that cause the development and the growth, we need to take into account also with the regional governments and with the municipal governments for all this territorial planning, without falling onto the trap of measuring the inhabitants and without providing solutions based on the number of inhabitants. Realities are very complex, very different everywhere. I come from Paris, from a meeting of the Civilization Alliances, trying to understand the complexities of understanding a city of 40,000 inhabitants both in a small town in France and in Spain. The issues are the same. They might realize in different situations, but it all brings us back to the public policies that should be counteracting the trends pushed by the markets only. And I think this is a big challenge that we have ahead of us. We need to profit from this opportunity. We probably need more resources, but probably more than resources, we need to use the existing resources coming from Europe in order to profit from the great advances that we are seeing around of us and right the wrongs that we have been making. I think that we can become more efficient in terms of implementing the public policies. These are key to regain trust from the citizens at a regional, local, and national, and even transnational level. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, alcalde. Many thanks to all the speakers. I'm sorry for the delay. Now we close the session and go to lunch. Hannah, come here. Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. We have like an hour of delay. Now it's time for this well-deserved break for lunch. Lunch will be served at the museum's restaurant. Please don't forget to leave your translation receivers in the stand. Yeah. I have a proposal. Okay.
Of course, we will have a lunch. But can we reduce the time for lunch? Because we have 2 additional sessions in front of us in the afternoon. And then we will have plenty of time for a fantastic dinner tonight. Do you agree that we
What
can...
time do you propose, like a quarter to 3?
45 minutes instead of 1 hour?
Okay.
So
At 3.
Yeah, 3.
we will back at 3. Okay? Sorry.